Hi, good afternoon. How are you all doing? My name is Abhilash. I'm a student and a folklore and culture study enthusiast. And welcome to session 13 of Folklore and Culture Studies. All right, if you're joining this session for the first time, or if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, let me tell you that I follow the MA in IGNU curriculum. And let me do a quick progress check as well. So I follow the MA IGNU curriculum where it's the whole subject is divided into four parts. The first section is folklore and culture studies, folklore and culture conceptual perspectives, under which block one is folklore issues and methods. Under block one, there are four units. We are done with unit one and unit two. Currently, we are in unit three. And let's do a quick recap of unit three. We Unit 3 is folklore and allied disciplines, and in the previous sessions we are done with anthropology, gender studies, and the immediate previous session was ethnomusicology. And today, what are we going to do? We are going to cover linguistics, which is super interesting in itself. All right. So without much ado, let us get started then. All right. I hope all of you are enjoying these sessions. If you do have any suggestions or feedback, the comment box is open. You can send an email as well. Right. So without much ado, let's get started then. So today, what are we going to cover? We are going to cover how folklore and culture is related to you know linguistics. Now, what is linguistics? Linguistic is the study of languages, right? So the study of languages or linguistics has greatly contributed to the study of folklore. They have several commonalities, and it has led to many fruitful exchanges between the two of them. So there's a lot of common things which is between linguistics and folklore and culture studies, which has led to fruitful exchanges, right? And both language and folklore are concerned about the meaning that they convey. So they are more focused about the meaning that they convey. They both study the interaction of the community and the responses of the performer with the audience, and the subject matter of the discipline becomes becomes of pivotal importance. What does that mean? It means they study the interaction between the community and the responses of the performer. So it's not just the conceptual perspectives, but the interaction between the community. How people talk to each others, how what are the cultural exchanges. So that's the common thing between both these subjects, and the responses of the performer. Now, who's a performer? Performer could mean, let's say, if you're talking right in a particular language, you become the performer. If you are reciting a poem or a poetry, you become the performer. So from that angle, this is what a performer means. This is not the common meaning of someone who comes to a stage and performs. All right. So, and the subject matter of the discipline, right? The core subject of the discipline becomes pivotal importance. Both linguistics and folklore are shaped by human experience. So so it's not static, it's dynamic indeed, where it is shaped by human experience, right? And human experience could change from person to person. For instance, let's say, you know, um, 10 people visit to a particular place, right? It's not necessary that all of them would have the same or would take away the same human experience, right? Therefore, it's dynamic. And right, so folklore and linguistics are shaped by human experience, understanding, and behaviors that are shaped by community and latent culture. Moving on, hence, linguistic plays a very important role in folklore studies. This is the reason why it is important. This discipline arose from the romantic ideals of the 18th and 19th century, where the efforts of the intellectuals and elite members of the society maintained the study of linguistics and folklore. So the elite members put in a lot of efforts to study the language as well, and they maintained the study of linguistics and folklore, which went hand in hand. Many of the concepts and theories of linguistics have been employed in the field of folklore. In the previous session, we've covered a few approaches, the academic approaches, where we've already spoken about linguistics. So this can be seen in the geographical and historical approaches, the geographical and historical approaches, the work of structuralists like Strauss, and ethnography of communication and speech patterns. So these, this is where um, there's a union between these two subjects of or disciplines. In the 19th century, linguistics was deeply involved in the historical origin of the language and its cultural growth. So linguistics was involved in the origin of language and its cultural growth. Prior existing forms of languages were studied and analyzed carefully and compared. This hence reveals certain generic concepts particularly found in the language of patterns of Europe. So this study, what did it reveal? It revealed that there were some generic concepts found, or generic concepts found particularly in the there's a common language pattern essentially, right? That's what it says. The Grimm brothers, very, I'm sure by now, if you're following these lectures, you would know who Grimm brothers are. So the Grimm brothers also collected their famous folk tales from the ancient Germanic mythology. Several Finnish scholars from Finland, Finnish scholars also studied the folk songs in details and used the techniques from comparative linguistics. Both folklorists and linguistics were deeply interested in the study of folk speech. So it's not just the linguistics, but also the folklorists were interested in the study of folk speech as well. So that's the common thing. By studying this, they hope to reconstruct. So what was objective behind that? The objective was they hope to reconstruct the historical and geographical conditions of the society. This helped to understand the cultural movements of a nation state. In this regard, great efforts were made, and publications of dictionaries such as Dictionary of American Regional English had a great influence. The main challenge facing the folklorists and linguistics is the collection of data. So this was one of the common challenges faced by both the folklorists and linguistics, was the collection of data, which eventually the work was, ethnography. When ethnography came into picture, the collection of data started to take place. But great efforts were put by the publications such as Dictionary of American Regional English, which had a great influence. Moving on, modernity has seen the erosion of several languages, right? What does it mean? Erosion is a term, as usually associated with soil, right? When water flows, you know, excessive water flows, it takes away certain portion of the, soil with itself, right? Which is erosion. But in this context, what it means, modernity with modern culture, certain, languages has seen erosion, which means the originality of the language, certain words started to change, or started to evolve, right? And the efforts of Bose and Alfred Kroeber and Edward Sapir are noteworthy. So these are some of the eminent personalities who put in some efforts to restore or save the language. So their painstaking efforts led to the recording and collecting of many American speech narratives. So what they did was they sort of recorded and collected many American speech narratives, which sort of helped preserve the language or the linguistics. All right. So Bose collected, what did Bose do? Bose collected many folk myths and other forms of religious narratives that helped to understand and comprehend history, value structure, and beliefs of the people, and the aesthetic concerns of the society, right? So what did he do? He not only collected folk myths, but other forms of religious narratives as well, which helped to understand history, the value system, the beliefs of the people, and the aesthetic concerns of the society. Aesthetic concerns would mean, right, the way people look at a, the visual appeal could be in terms of you know dressing, or could be in terms of how let's say if there is a particular function, how it is organized, what are the things used to make it more appealing and beautiful, right? So Edward Sapir believed that the study of languages helps to understand the world, right? So why, how is this important? Is the linguistic helps to understand the world, right? He did recognize regional and cultural variations and said that language is subjective, right? Language is subjective, isn't it? Let's say, if we talk about India, in India itself, I think there are more than 200 300 languages. So if you belong to a particular state and you move from one district to another, there are cultural variations, the nuances differ, right? And therefore it is rightly said that the language is subjective. According to Sapir, an individual thoughts are greatly determined by language, right? So if you speak a particular language, your thought, I mean, obviously we think in the language that we speak, right? So hence our thoughts are sort of determined by language, is what Sapir feels. According to Wolf, the problem of thought and thinking in the native community is not purely and simply a psychological problem. It is largely cultural. It is moreover a matter of one especially cohesive aggregate of cultural phenomena that we call language, right? Let's decode this. What does it say? What does Wolf say? He says that the problem of, to simplify what he says is, let's say if we think in a particular way, what matter, so it is not related to the psychological issues, right? It's not about an individual's perspective or viewpoints. It is largely cultural. Now, culture means what? And it is especially a cohesive. Cohesive is collective, right? Collective aggregate of the cultural phenomena. So, a language that we speak that influences our thoughts, and the thoughts, the origin of those thoughts is culture. So, let's say if you are born or you speak a particular language and you're born in a particular community, more or less we try to think in the same way as the community does. So that's what they're trying to say, that language is not just a superficial element, but it also is linked to the culture, which in turn relates to the thought process, other aspects as well, other deeper aspects as well. Languages Language thus serves as a foundation of culture, right? Hence it is called the foundation of culture. This has also been realized by other disciplines such as anthropology. So it is not only in folklore or linguistics, in anthropology as well, this this thought has been vetted, or this thought has been realized, that the language is the basis of the foundation of culture. This helps to study the values held by the people. One must add here that the efforts of linguistics of Prague school of thought, right? So let's understand what Prague school of thought says. The scholars in the school, which mean Prague school of thoughts, such as Jacobson and Bogatry, paid attention not to the historical development of language, but at the usage of it. So Jacobson and Bogatry, what they did was, so their attention was not how the language, the origin of language, but the usage of it, which means the functional aspect of it, right? Its functional features were studied along with its content. This school led to development of ethnopoetics, right? And this, now what is ethnopoetics? This is the study of aesthetic structures in oral performances. This discipline seeks to discover the descriptive features of oral traditions. In a lot of communities around the world, there is a concept of oral tradition, right? Which means, let's say, a lot of things are not written down, but orally transformed or passed on from one generation to other. And ethnopoetics is, it's about studying or seeking to discover the descriptive features of oral traditions, right? How a particular thing is described, and etc. That's ethnopoetics. Initially, this was studied basically on Native American narratives, right? But it soon spread to other forms and genres as well. So if Native Americans, um, now I think the percentage of Native Americans within America is less than 1%, right? And I think initially it was studied on the Native Americans, but soon it spreads to other forms and genres as well. And this helps folklorists to look into the concerns of literature, translation, and cultural change. Both Del Himes and John Gumpers have greatly contributed to this study. So these are two other prominent people who've contributed to this study. What have they done? They have researched on the pauses, right? When we take a pause, we speak and take a pause, like I did right now. So the research on the pauses and the tonal qualities of voice and seen its variation in folk narratives, right? So when it comes to language, particularly linguistics, right, a lot of it depends upon taking appropriate pauses, modulation of voice, your tonal quality, and variation in the speech as well. So this is what these two gentlemen studied, right, or researched upon. And so let's just repeat again. They have research on the pauses and the tonal qualities of the voice and seen its variation in folk narratives. So how these pause and tonal quality have helped in variation in folk narratives as well. It has been observed by Himes that Native American languages resemble poetry rather than prose. So the way that Native Americans used to speak, that sounded more like a poetry than reading a text or a prose, right? So that is the speech pattern. Now, this is the functional aspect, not how the language originated. This has helped researchers to find grammatical structures and find patterns in cultural speech. Wow. Another, so, the way you speak, I mean, to simplify, right? See, we have grammar. Grammar is a rule, right? In simple words, it's a rule. It defines how a particular statement should be formed, frame. However, if you come to think of it, the grammar would slightly change, right? When it comes to prose or poetry. And this is what helped these researchers find a particular structure or find a pattern in a cultural speech. Another very important linguistic who contributed greatly to folklore studies is Saucer. He studied the speech acting within a context and determined the rules of the language, right? Let's understand more. He also observed about signs and symbols that determine this study as semiotics. So semiotics is the study of signs and symbols, in a particular language. So folklore as a discipline greatly makes use of semiotics. This verifies the functions of signs as means to interpret communication. Both artistic and social communication comes under this purview. In the 1970s and 1980s, Chomsky discovered the basic rules for spoken language and avoided its study within the social context. During the 60s and 70s, researchers like Del Himes and John Campus focused on their attention on language functions in context. They say that language is a key signifier to define the community and its everyday processes, right? That's as interesting. They say language is a key signifier to define a community, define a particular community and its everyday day-to-day processes. They define social groups as speech community, right? According to Himes, social groups is a community sharing rules for the conduct and interpretation of speech and rules for the interpretation of at least one linguistic variety. The understanding this the understanding this allows us to study communities that have more than one language and are bilingual. Hence, folklorists owe a great deal to the effective methods employed by the linguists, and in turn, the linguists have also gained much from the folklorists. Thus, they give each other new perspectives and fresh dimensions for growth and exploration. So, in simple words, what does it mean? It means that, according to Himes, it helps them interpret a particular speech pattern, right? So the pattern could be different, if a particular community speaks one language, and the pattern can be different or is different, particularly for a community where they speak bilingual, right? For example, in India, we speak bilingual, right? We speak English, we speak, our native language and other languages as well. So our community is a bilingual community, and the speech pattern could differ, right, from a community which speaks only one language and a community which is bilingual. And this research has not only helped the linguistics, but also helps the folklorists. And this is how these two disciplines are intertwined or interconnected. I hope so. That's all we have for today. I hope you found this session interesting. And if you have, or if you do find these sessions interesting, I strongly recommend that you subscribe to this channel and share as well, so that people, who are also enthusiasts like us, can be a part of this community. All right. So that's all I have in this session for you today. I will see you again in the next session with one more allied discipline and their subject, and then the link, right? So till then, have a great Friday, and I will see you in the next session. Take care. Bye bye.